This episode doesn't break your heart slowly. It grabs it, squeezes it, and then asks a question you've been avoiding the entire series. Were you ever really ready for this? The Chosen Season 6, Episode 1 doesn't feel like the beginning of a season. It feels like the moment everything finally stops pretending. From the very first minutes, there's a weight in the air that doesn't lift, not even for a second. No inspirational buildup, no comforting reminder that things will work out. Just silence, tension, and the uncomfortable realization that the story has crossed a line it can't step back from. This episode isn't trying to impress you, it's trying to prepare you. And honestly, it's not gentle about it. What makes this episode so devastating isn't just the new crucifixion footage everyone is talking about, it's the way the episode approaches it. There's no dramatic announcement, no musical cue telling you how to feel. The pain doesn't rush in screaming. It walks in quietly and sits there, daring you to look away. Jesus doesn't enter this episode as a figure of triumph. He enters as someone already carrying the weight of what's coming, and everyone around him seems to feel it, even if they don't fully understand it yet. There's an emotional shift that's impossible to ignore. Earlier seasons allowed moments of relief, a smile, a miracle, a sense that hope was just around the corner. Episode 1 of Season 6 strips that safety away almost immediately. The conversations feel heavier, the pauses feel longer. Every word sounds like it's being chosen carefully, because once it's spoken, it can't be taken back. Even faith feels different here. It's quieter, more fragile, almost afraid. What's especially unsettling is how normal everything looks on the surface. People are still talking, still asking questions, still trying to understand. But underneath all of it, there's a growing sense that time is running out. Not in a dramatic, ticking clock way, but in a slow, suffocating way. Like everyone is walking forward without realizing they're heading towards something irreversible. And Jesus knows it. That awareness changes everything. His calm doesn't feel reassuring anymore. It feels heavy, almost painful to watch. The new crucifixion footage doesn't rely on shock. That's what makes it so hard to process. There's restraint, respect, and somehow that makes it hit harder than anything graphic ever could. You're not being forced to react. You're being allowed to sit with it, and that's far more uncomfortable. The episode seems determined to remove the distance viewers often keep between themselves and this story. It's not history anymore. It's happening, and you're standing close enough to feel it. The disciples, once so sure of the path they were on, now feel unsettled in ways they don't have words for. Their faith hasn't disappeared, but it's shaking, and the episode doesn't judge them for it. It lets that fear exist. It lets doubt breathe. Because this is the moment where belief stops being about inspiration and starts being about endurance. And not everyone is ready for that shift. By the time the first section of this episode settles in, one thing becomes painfully clear. This season is not asking you to admire the story anymore. It's asking you to witness it, to stay present even when it hurts, to keep watching even when every instinct tells you to look away. And that raises a terrifying question. If this is only the beginning, what will it cost to keep going? As episode 1 continues, the heaviness doesn't fade, it settles deeper. The story slows down in a way that feels intentional, almost confrontational. It's as if the episode is daring the audience to stay uncomfortable. There's no rushing past emotion, no quick cuts to give you relief. Instead, every moment lingers just long enough to make you feel the weight of what's unfolding. This isn't storytelling designed to entertain, it's storytelling designed to expose. What's striking is how isolated Jesus feels, even when he's surrounded by people who love him. There's a distance that can't be crossed anymore. You can see it in the way others look at him, with concern, confusion, desperation, as if they sense something slipping away but don't know how to stop it. And the most painful part, Jesus knows they can't. He doesn't explain it, he doesn't soften it. He carries that knowledge quietly, and that silence becomes one of the loudest elements of the episode. Authority begins to close in, but not in an explosive or chaotic way. It's subtle, controlled, almost polite. Questions are asked that sound reasonable on the surface, but feel dangerous underneath. Words like order, safety, and tradition are used as shields, hiding fear and insecurity. Jesus isn't treated like a criminal because of violence or rebellion. He's treated like a problem because he refuses to bend. And that makes powerful people deeply uncomfortable. The episode does something unsettling here. It makes injustice feel familiar. There's no screaming crowd yet, no dramatic sentencing, just conversations behind closed doors, glances exchanged, decisions slowly taking shape. Responsibility is passed around until no one feels fully responsible. And that's what makes it disturbing. You start to realize that the crucifixion isn't coming from one moment of evil, but from many small compromises stacked on top of each other. The disciples feel this shift too. Fear doesn't explode, it creeps in quietly. Conversations trail off. Confidence turns into hesitation. Loyalty is still there, but it's strained by uncertainty. This isn't betrayal born from hatred, it's doubt born from survival instinct. And the episode treats that honestly. It doesn't shame them, it lets their confusion exist, because this is what happens when faith is tested without miracles to soften the blow. The new crucifixion elements woven into this episode don't dominate the screen, they haunt it. Even when they're not visible, they're felt. Every pause feels like a step closer. Every unanswered question feels heavier than the last. The episode seems to understand that anticipation can be more devastating than action. You know what's coming. Everyone knows what's coming. And yet, watching the path toward it unfold is almost unbearable. By the time this section ends, the message is unmistakable. Hope no longer feels safe. Faith no longer feels victorious. What remains is obedience in the face of fear. And that's far harder to watch than any miracle ever was. And it leaves you staring at the screen with one unsettling thought. If the pressure is already this intense, what happens when silence finally turns into judgment? By the time episode 1 moves deeper into its runtime, the tension stops building and starts pressing down. There's no release, no emotional exhale. The episode seems fully aware that the audience is waiting for something dramatic to happen, and it refuses to give that comfort. Instead, it leans into restraint. Silence stretches longer than expected. Looks are held a second too long. And in those moments, the weight becomes almost suffocating. This isn't suspense created by mystery. It's suspense created by inevitability. Jesus' calm becomes harder to watch here, not because it feels weak, but because it feels final. There's no sense of negotiation left in him, no attempt to redirect what's coming. His presence doesn't challenge authority with force. It exposes it by simply existing. And that's exactly why the pressure intensifies. Power doesn't know how to respond to someone who refuses to play the game. The episode makes it painfully clear that truth doesn't need to shout to be threatening. Sometimes it just stands there and waits. The emotional cost on the people closest to him becomes impossible to ignore. Mary's pain isn't explained. It doesn't need to be. It lives in her silence, in the way she watches, in the way she seems to understand more than anyone wants to admit. The disciples, once eager and certain, now look like people realizing that following Jesus means standing close enough to be hurt. Their faith hasn't vanished, but it's being stripped of every illusion they once relied on. What makes this section especially unsettling is how ordinary the injustice feels. There are no villains twirling in shadows, just leaders trying to maintain control, just systems protecting themselves, just people choosing convenience over truth, step by step. The episode quietly suggests that the most dangerous moments aren't loud or violent. They're calm, official, and justified. And that realization lands harder than any accusation ever could. The crucifixion imagery continues to hover without fully revealing itself. It's always just out of frame, just beyond the moment. And that choice is deliberate. The episode understands that dread grows stronger when the audience is forced to imagine rather than observe. Every conversation feels like a countdown. Every delay feels cruel. And yet, nothing feels rushed. The pacing forces you to sit with the discomfort instead of escaping it. There's a subtle shift in the disciples here, not toward rebellion, but toward fear. Loyalty begins to bend under pressure, not because they stop believing, but because belief suddenly carries consequences they never prepared for. This isn't a failure of faith, it's the reality of it. And the episode refuses to make that easy to watch. As this section comes to a close, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. There are no more safe places in this story, no emotional shelter, no comforting distance between the viewer and what's coming. And that leaves a chilling question hanging in the air. When obedience demands everything, who will still be standing when the final choice is made? By the final stretch of episode 1, something shifts, quietly but permanently. The episode stops feeling like a warning and starts feeling like a commitment. There's no turning back now. Not for the characters and not for the audience. Every moment feels heavier because it's no longer about what might happen, but about what must happen. The story isn't rushing toward the crucifixion. It's walking there, slowly, deliberately, refusing to let anyone pretend this is just another chapter. What's most haunting is how powerless everyone feels. Not just the disciples, but the authorities too. Even the people pushing events forward don't seem fully in control anymore. Decisions are made, then justified, then quietly regretted, but never undone. The episode makes it clear that once truth threatens comfort, systems will always choose stability over righteousness. And that choice doesn't come with shouting or rage. It comes with calm voices, official language, and hands washed clean of responsibility. Jesus, meanwhile, remains steady in a way that feels almost unbearable to witness. His silence isn't empty, it's intentional. It forces everyone else to reveal themselves. Accusations sound weaker when they aren't answered. Power looks smaller when it isn't resisted. The episode suggests something deeply unsettling here, that injustice often relies on reaction to survive. And when there is no reaction, it exposes itself for what it truly is. The emotional weight reaches its peak not through action, but through anticipation. Every glance feels like a goodbye that no one wants to say out loud. Every quiet moment feels borrowed. The crucifixion doesn't need to be shown in full yet because it's already present in the atmosphere. It's in the way conversations end too quickly, in the way people avoid eye contact, in the way hope is no longer spoken, only remembered. What makes this ending so devastating is how honest it is. There's no attempt to reassure the audience, no promise that watching will be easy. The episode closes with the understanding that faith, at this point, offers no protection from pain. It only offers meaning within it. And that's a much harder truth to sit with. As the screen fades and the weight of everything settles in, one final realization hits harder than anything shown so far. If episode 1 already feels this unbearable, how will anyone survive what comes next when the cross is no longer approaching, but unavoidable?